In continuing on with my top 30 favorite TV shows of all time, we have reached the top 5, brought to you by Spill. If you don't know Spill.com, then you'll probably have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, but it was a great site back in the day, and they're still around. It's double toasted, but that's a whole other thing altogether. A bunch of other sites as well, but again, whole other thing altogether. We are at the top 5 favorite TV shows of all time, and a lot of the shows that we're going to get to are shows that I pretty much have touched on in other blog posts and videos, so we'll try to make these as brief as we can, but let's start off with a show that I don't usually talk about as much as I should. I mean, I touched on the Christmas episodes last July, for Christmas in July, but my number 5 favorite TV show of all time is Community. I can't count the reasons I should stay. One by one, they all just fade away. This was one of those shows that was really ahead of its time in terms of, the unique way its writing was. And, this is Dan Harmon, who, of course, will later give us Rick and Morty down the road. And, put together a simple concept with a really incredibly charming cast overall and great writing all across the board. And you have one of the most unique TV shows you'll ever see in your life. So the show centers around Jeff Winger, who's disbarred or suspended from his law firm when it's discovered that he lied about having a bachelor's degree from Columbia University. So to earn a legitimate degree, he enrolls at Greendale Community College in Colorado. He quickly becomes attracted to his classmate, social activist Britta Perry, and pretends to run a study group in order to spend time with her. Britta invites classmate Abed Nadir, a socially awkward and pop culture obsessed student who in turn brings other classmates along. Religious single mother Shirley Bennett, naive overachiever Annie Edison, former high school football star Troy Barnes, and bigoted elderly millionaire Pierce Hawthorne. Despite their differences, the group's members soon become close friends. They are often roped into helping the college's flamboyant dean, Craig Pelton, into schemes to make the school much more respectable, as well as having to deal with the antics of their mentally unstable teacher and eventual classmate and friend, Ben Chang. And I touched on this show right at its peak. The first 3 seasons of the show were terrific. And this show looked like it was on its way to becoming one of those great TV shows, having that great... I always have the season 4 theory, where the 4th season of a TV show is usually where you hit the peak, and the show gets back to true... And the show is at its high mark, and you're never going to be able to top that. But unfortunately, Dan Harmon was fired from the show after its 3rd season. Something had happened in the production process between season 3 and season 4, where... he left the show and they put in these 2 guys who worked on the short-lived series Aliens in America, which, was a show that lasted about 1 season on the CW. And, Harmon, you see when Dan Harmon's no longer with the show, and also you miss out some notable people such as, Neil Goldman and Garrett Donovan, Chris McKenna, Dino Stamatopoulos, who wrote some of the more memorable episodes, and also Anthony and Joe Russo, who had just left to go direct Captain America the Winter Soldier and establish their career overall. This was a show that, this show was on its way to something great, and then that 4th season comes around, and it's not bad per se, but you can definitely feel that, once you take those pieces out of there, the show unfortunately loses a lot of its muster, and they really blew an opportunity to have one of those great 4 seasons right up there with a couple of other shows we'll get to here in the top 5 in just a little bit, but Dan Harmon does come back for season 5 as well as season 6, and the show does find its form again. This is a show that for the most part has been really good. It never fell below lesser quality overall. That 4th season in general was kind of the weak link, but they find their way back in the next 2 seasons overall. This is a show that this is a show that I've touched on in the past when it was at its peak. It works on so many levels. The relationships between the study group is very well done. You got these terrific actors, Joel McHale, Jillian Jacobs, Danny Pudi, Yvette Nicole Brown, Allison Brie, Donald Glover, Ken Jeong, Chevy Chase, Jim Rash. all these guys work off each other really well. You get to see a lot of people that we know nowadays as these great actors in their early prime, like Alison Brie. You know, a lot of people didn't know who Donald Glover was before this. He'd done Derek Comedy. Danny Pudi's a guy you've seen in commercials a lot. Yvette Nicole Brown had been on Drake and Josh. Gillian Jacobs, her big breakout role was the year before in the movie Choke with Sam Rockwell, which was a brilliantly underrated film. You haven't seen that one, definitely check that out. Joel McHale was probably the biggest of the known talents besides obviously Chevy Chase. He was on The Soup, of course. You know, Ken Jeong had just broke out the summer before with The Hangover. Even John Oliver shows up in this, as his name was becoming more known with The Daily Show, and then after that, Last Week Tonight. So there is a lot of good talent on the show that makes it work, and when you combine it with the comedy stylings of these writers like Dan Harmon and the people behind it, like the Russo brothers and Neil Gaiman and Garrett Donovan, who'd worked on Scrubs, Tristan Shapiro, Chris McKenna, Rob Schraub. I mean, these guys all really worked on this show really well. I mean, one of the composers is Ludwig Göransson, who's gone on to become one of our great composers in filmmaking. He's won 2 Academy Awards for the scores for Black Panther and Oppenheimer, and might be on his way to a third one coming up with Sinners this year. So yeah, he's gone. It really is amazing how his career really took off with the show. A lot of people's careers really took off with this show in general. I mean, it's a show that kept getting better with the first 3 seasons, and season 4, like I said, wasn't bad, but it definitely was the black sheep of the show, because once everyone came back for seasons 5 and 6, the show did find its way back to form again, and the show does end on a really good note overall. And, you know, you're just waiting for the inevitable, 6 seasons of the movie, which was a joke that Abed said about The Cape, which was a show that did not last very long on NBC. But, Joe McHale, the great thing about that joke in general was that it's Abed who's so obsessed with the show The Cape, and, he's just going around the cafeteria messing around, and Jeff Winger's just like, that show's gonna be gone after 4 weeks, and Abed's just like, 6 seasons in a movie, I mean, the camaraderie between Abed and also Troy is just great. Danny Pudi and Donald Glover are really fun in this. And the show just overall is just so unique in how it does its comedy. There'll be episodes where they'll take you to like a video game world. There'll be musicals that are also seen kind of like parodies of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Like I mentioned, the Christmas episode is one I watch every single year. It's like a parody of stop-motion claymation specials like, of course, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. This show was absolutely amazing, and a show that was definitely ahead of its time, and when it was on, never really got the proper respect from, the general viewing public as a whole. I mean, NBC, kudos to them for keeping it on as long as they did, but it did not help them when the show had to go up against The Big Bang Theory, when that moved to Thursday night, and, Community was just trying to find its audience. It just basically felt like the show, it really just felt like the show was kind of landing on a bomb when Big Bang Theory moved to Thursday night. But hey, the show had a good run. One season that wasn't as good as it should have been, but the show overall was still a ton of fun. It was a really fun show, very well ahead of its time, really great. Cast overall is fantastic. It was a show that just worked. It's a show that just worked on so many levels. I don't have much more to say about it, man. Community just rocks, man. It's a show that I go back to every once in a while. It's my number 5 favorite TV show of all time. It's one of those groundbreaking shows that really stood the test, that really was ahead of its time when it first came on, and has kind of established the norm for some of the great live-action some of the great TV sitcoms that we've had since then. I mean, 2009 in general, when I think about it, really was the last great peak of the broadcast television sitcom, because you had Community on, Parks and Recreation was coming into its own in its second year when the show was premiering, The Middle was on, Modern Family. I mean, this was a good time for broadcast scripted situation comedy, and the last great time we'd have it, because, I mean, really, there hasn't really been much since probably after 2015 that really has kind of broken the mold, with the exception of Abbott Elementary, But yeah, not much more I can really say about Community, except that it's one of the great shows we've had out there, and one of those shows that, if you have not seen it, see it, man. You are definitely missing out on a true masterpiece of a show. So there you go. Community's number 5 on my list. So that means we're only 4 weeks away from wrapping this up. And like I said, you pretty much already can kind of tell what my number 1 show is. But we'll get to that as we go along here if you don't know just yet. But if you want to hear what I say about my number 6 show, Batman the Animated Series, check out the video in the corner. Check out the playlist as well. And I will see you guys next week to begin the Final 4.